Welcome, everybody. Bobby Moore here for the Power of Connection chat and broadcast. Excited to be here with my friend Dan. Say hello.
Hello.
This is going to be a fantastic interview. I'm so excited. I've known Dan for a long time, and we're going to talk about challenging assumptions and building empathy, which is great. So a bit about Power of Connection. So I do a weekly broadcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about issues around career and workplace. But the topics I focus on are things like employee engagement, people leadership, personal branding, authentic networking, public speaking, and things like that. And then I like to bring guests on who kind of add or complement the stuff that I want to talk about that's going to help people out there in the workplace. So that's the why we're here. Now, if you are joining us, a few house rules. Number one, please engage, ask questions, comment below, share your reaction. You can like, tap, love, heart, smiley face, all that kind of stuff. That's great. Maureen's already there. Say hello. Hey, Maureen, good to see you. That's fantastic. So you can comment and say stuff. Secondly, let us know where you're from. I'd love to hear. Are you from Africa, North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia? We get all kinds from all places, which is wonderful. So we love to know where you're from. And then, of course, during the course of this thing, we're going to share insights and stories, and then hopefully you can ask questions. And if you really like it, tag people, bring them to the conversation, share your own page, tag people. Let's get people joining the conversation. All right. So that's really the first thing that I want to make sure you guys are cool with. And I thank you for joining me. And Dan is also a fellow motivational speaker, keynote speaker. He and I have spoken at similar events, and I've seen him speak over the years. He's seen me speak over the years. So he's someone I admire. He's a good friend, and I love his stuff because he's also a world-class magician. And so whenever and it's funny because he's always so giddy about it. So which is nice because you think like someone does something for 20 years, you're like, okay, after a while, don't you get bored of it? Like, there's burnout. No, he's giddy as a school kid, like, oh, let me show this new thing. And he's like, my mind blown, which is awesome. So I love that when he does it. So today we're going to talk about challenging assumptions and building empathy. And I remember a conversation we had maybe about less than a year ago about empathy and gratitude and things like that. So it's all related, which is great. So I love the fact that you do a lot of stuff in the heart leadership space. But I thought we'll start off actually just by you talking a bit about, why empathy is important and kind of going from there. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Well, I think empathy just in general is obviously if you're going to help somebody, you need to know how they want to be helped. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly coming from my perspective as a magician, it's impossible to create an illusion of the impossibility for someone if you don't understand their physical perspective. Okay. Right? If I'm going to hold something here and make it disappear, I can't only be concerned with how it looks from my perspective. I need to understand what it looks like from your perspective.
Let's make sure I'm getting cut off here. So yeah.
And that's why magicians so often practice in front of a mirror, right? Because that mirror then acts as the eyeballs of an audience. You know what? I can do this. I didn't think about this, Bobby. This will be good.
Okay.
So from the camera's perspective, so this is a Canadian silver dollar. From the camera's perspective, this probably looks like I take the coin, rub it, and it disappears. Right? And then I can just take it off out of the air. It's right there. If I squeeze it, and then it comes back. From the camera's perspective, that probably looked okay. From your perspective, I don't know if you were looking over.
I was looking at the camera.
It wasn't good. Then I didn't spoil anything for you. Because from your perspective, had you looked over, it would have been a very different looking.
I may have seen something, yeah.
You would have most certainly seen something that would have not engendered wonder in you. Okay. Maybe wonder in the fact that I wonder why someone would take that much time to learn such a strange thing, but certainly not a wonder of where that coin goes. Okay. Yeah. So I think in my experience as a magician, having a deeper sense of empathy helps me create pieces of magic that will actually feel like magic and engender a sense of wonder. And then now in my case, now as a speaker and a trainer, carry that message of the magic deeper. So yeah, cool trick, but so what? Well, so this is so what? Build on it from there.
So what do you think are some of the things that people struggle with when it comes to leveraging empathy? I mean, You know, I read a statistic that said that 20% of people have zero empathy.
20%
20%
of
people have zero empathy. I mean, what has happened? How have we got to a point where we have zero empathy? I don't even understand that.
I don't either. I think there's a number of reasons that come to mind. For zero empathy, I can't address that. That seems like a
But in general, it is lowering as a society. So I'm just curious, what do you think is the things that's causing that?
Well, I think we don't have a sense. We're losing the sense that our perspective is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big reason for that are these devices that we have in our pocket every day.
Okay.
Every day we look at this thing, this phone, and it feeds us information. You Google anything, you're going to get a set of results that are specific to you,
right,
based on your history, based on your searching trends. It's very easy then to assume that everybody's getting those same results. Right? Because that's kind of how it used to be. That's how Google was when I started using it. Now it's so personalized. It's so easy to assume, well, if I look up this one thing and I get these results, so does everybody else.
Right. I mean, I think another thing that comes into play is like the world is more complex. And so because it's more complex from every aspect of life, I think that technology and advancements are great, but does the human population catch up? And I think they're having trouble keeping up. So I think education and critical thinking and overwhelm are issues that are affecting our ability to connect with the world. And at the same time, I think that because people have a lot of issues and they have anger, they have challenges, they have trouble processing. And so people who are angry, people who are overwhelmed, people who are feeling some sort of oppression or helplessness or whatever it might be affecting their processing. And so there's people who are angry that lack empathy. Like most people I know that I've identified that lack empathy out there are usually very, very angry, right? Like I was once talking to a bunch of people on Facebook around, it was a political thing, but they were on one political side. I said, yeah, but can you empathize with the people that are struggling from the other side? And like, no. And then just completely zero empathy. I'm like, how can you have zero empathy? Like, just put yourself in their shoes. Imagine if you were them. What would you? Wow, I would do that. Well, okay, it's not that easy. And they just couldn't do it. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, there's got to be a way for us to be able to put ourselves in each other's shoes.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do that, well, I've got a number of different thoughts on how to do that. But I think the most important thing is just stop and realize your truth is not the only truth.
Sure.
Your experience is not the only experience.
Yeah.
And that takes effort.
Right.
We've got this thought that reality is reality. And I suppose that may be true, that there is some sort of objective reality, but we view that reality through a set of filters, through our experience, through our attitudes, through our upbringing, through just what we had for breakfast this morning is going to shift how we see the world. So while there may be an objective reality out there, we can't see it. We got to see it. We can only see our own reality. 7 billion people on the planet. There's 7 billion different versions of reality.
Yeah.
So I think one of the best ways to get past that is, one, realize that your version of reality is only one of many, and two, start gathering more information. Start talking to people, ask questions, get their perspective, try to understand their point of view. And I think this is important, without judgment.
Right.
Just be curious.
Okay.
By all means, judge at length later.
Okay.
But if you can manage to take judgment out of that curiosity phase, then the information can come in.
Right.
And you just get a better sense of what it's like from their point of view. Later on, you can go ahead and judge that. But it doesn't make any sense. It makes me think of the creative process, right? You come up with a great idea. You come up with a whole bunch of ideas, and then pick the best one. And that picking that best one is judgment. If you want to come up,
pick a perspective, then is that what you mean, based on getting information?
well, I'm just trying to draw an analogy between creativity and empathy, really, to separate out the judgment phase from the information phase.
Now, if you're just joining us, this is the Power Connection broadcast, and I'm with Dan Trommater, who's a magician, keynote speaker, and we're talking about empathy. Building empathy, challenging assumptions. That people are, if you're joining and people are commenting, which is great. Let's see. Amokrin says, "Hi, Bob. This is your neighbor from Montreal. I'll be at live tonight at 6 p.m. That's awesome. Great." Marianne says, "A little bit of magic. Awesome." Marianne says, Jensla says yes to the magic of empathy. Maureen says, "We often take assumptions for facts." That's true. Marianne also says, "I think is because empathy is seen as a weakness rather than a strength."
Oh, that's interesting.
Really? That, I mean, I understand people seeing vulnerability as a weakness, which I disagree with, but I've never heard of someone saying empathy is, I mean,
I guess
like versus, I guess maybe Gordon Gekko would disagree with this, or he'd say, "Yeah, that's right, empathy is bad." Is that what she's referring to?
Well, the only way we know what she's referring to is if we ask her. So give us some more clarification, Marianne. The way I take it to mean, just from what you've said so far, empathy being a weakness, yeah, I think you're right in terms of that Gordon Gekko thought, that it's a lot easier to be sure of things and to be confident without empathy, right? Well, I'm very confident in my point of view. That's the way it is, and that's all there is to it.
Or the fact that, look, this is business, and we need to make business decisions, and so it's like, it's not personal, it's business. I remember I was watching on television "You Got Mail," which is a classic movie with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. And, his big shop closed up her shop, and he's like, "It's not personal, it's just business." And she's like, "That's ridiculous. Everything is personal. Okay, I closed my shop. That's personal to me. So don't give me that BS that it's not personal. No, everything's personal. Every interaction in business, when you let someone go, when you have a conflict, when you even make a decision, it affects people emotionally. And so there is personal there. And so I think some people say, well, I'm not responsible for that. No, you are, but they choose not to be because they think it's going to make them less decisive, maybe less authoritarian, less of a results-oriented person. But yeah, that's a really interesting point. Okay.
Well, I think if someone is highly empathetic, arguably overly empathetic,
right,
I think it could become a weakness because you become so concerned with others relative to yourself,
consumed,
that you can start to sacrifice yourself based on the needs of others.
That's a fantastic good point. And you know what? Again, I'm using all these references to TV and movies, but I just saw another show called The Good Place. And which thing is that one of the premises of the show is that the world is so complex that now it's virtually impossible for people to be super good all the time. And there was this guy who tried every single thing he did, was completely empathetic to everything, would always serve other people, and it was actually affecting his life in a really negative way. And then the result was he wasn't getting anywhere. So yeah, I can totally see that. Wow. Okay. Now, Maurice says political is personal. Well, I mean, everything is personal. Business, politics, life, everything is personal in some way. So it's important. Now let's shift gears to challenging assumptions. Maybe kind of get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Some of that.
Well, sure. So a lot of work is around helping people challenge their assumptions, which again means you've got to realize that you're making assumptions, and that can be tough because, again, that whole idea of reality being subjective. My truth is very obvious to me. You would think it should be obvious to everybody, and that's where conflicts can come in, right? You get two different people looking at a set of facts. They're going to see things differently, even if it is hard numbers, data. Interpretation is very different, and that's where I suppose challenging, realizing you're making those assumptions, and then just start asking, okay, well, this statement has been really useful for me lately, which is, what's the story I'm telling myself? Because if I am telling myself this person is out to get me, well, then I'm going to cherry pick the data to confirm that assumption.
Yes.
As opposed to stepping back, asking more questions, being more empathetic, trying to get more information about their point of view. That's a better way to move forward.
And that's why I love this topic, because this is something I see all the time on Twitter, particularly, but most social media, where people they're trying to just verify their own kind of perspective. They're not really open to being more empathetic, because for me, I try to build bridges. I mean, a lot of people on there are divisive. It's like, look, divisiveness only creates more divide. So, I even argue with another friend on Facebook who's like, he's really angry and he rants and rants. I'm like, look, that's fine. If you want people to change, you have to listen to them. You have to understand what's going on. You have to empathize, and then by creating that connection, only then can you start to change into a better situation, or maybe have them understand a little bit better. So, like for me, like that's what I try to do. I try to say, look, let me try to understand where you're coming from, even if I disagree with you, even if I think your perspective is way off. Like, listen to who you are. That I find that empathy and that bridging connection and challenging something.
Yeah, what you're saying makes it judgment. We so often jump to judgment. I was in, my wife and I flew to Los Angeles for an event there. And as we're sitting at LAX, waiting for luggage carousel, I'm just standing there looking around, not particularly thinking of anything. At least not consciously. I hear my wife say, "What are you judging?" Turns out I had my judgy face on. I was standing there like this.
Yeah.
And realized that I was looking at this billboard-sized advertisement for Rolex and thinking, oh, what kind of person needs stupid LA, all these materialistic people? And I jumped straight into judgment.
Oh, wow.
And judgment is fun. It's one of the biggest barriers to empathy is judgment, is because judgment is fun. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel better. At least relative, yes, exactly. Better about yourself. It's not really better. And that, it just made me realize how quickly we jump to judgment, and how so often that, by all means, judgment is necessary. We need judgment. We need to know this food is bad. This moldy food is going to make me sick. I'm not going to eat it. Good judgment. Yeah. That person looks like this. They're dangerous. Risky judgment.
Right. Okay. People are commenting, which is great. Let's see. So Jen says, sometimes what looks like someone being overly empathetic is really a person treating the other person the way they want to be treated. In the therapeutic world, we call it countertransference. Emma gives the heart. Marley says, good morning, guys. Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think assumptions. And assumptions are also the foundation for bias, right? Every single bias we have is based on the assumptions we make about people, about things, about events, which also affects the perspective of things. And so, and I think the biggest assumptions, a lot of people don't even realize, where the assumptions are. So I used to teach a course for GMAT. And so people are in the GMAT, they have to write a math and a verbal section. In the verbal section, they do this critical reasoning section. And one of the things that I tell people, I explain the basic context of arguments. The basic syllogism is based on evidence, and then a statement. And there's an assumption that links the evidence to the statement. And so, particularly in politics, but also business, but mostly in politics, when people argue, debate, they focus on disbelieving the fact, which is not the way to go. They try to, discredit the messenger, which doesn't make sense. They have all these different logical fallacies that they don't. But the truest way to actually win an argument and to break down an argument is to challenge the assumption, right? So if A equals B and B equals C, therefore A equals C. Well, are we sure A equals B? And what's the assumption to get from A to C? How do we jump there? So yeah, if you really want to win an argument, you have to actually go after the assumption. And if you do that, then you'll be much better actually breaking down. Most people don't do that. They don't look at the assumption. They look at what was actually presented. They look at what was concluded. They look at what the person said and how they said it versus the true information, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that when given information, our natural tendency is to believe the first thing we heard and then assume that everything that follows that, if it disagrees with that first thing, is wrong. That's a logical fallacy. It's one of those human brain things. And I think that's where knowledge is born. Once you know that that's a phenomenon that happens in your own mind, then you can start to take steps to actually counter that.
So I'm talking here with Dan Trommater, who is a keynote speaker, a magician, and we're talking about empathy and challenging assumptions. So let's talk about empathy in terms of like empathy in the workplace. So what are some things maybe, like what are some things you see that are lacking and how to improve those things?
I think we're right back to that same idea of assuming that your truth is the same as everybody else's truth. You get different people looking at the same set of facts. You don't want to. I wonder if I have one.
Has anyone felt that way? I mean, hey, listen, if you have stories around, where people have lacked empathy or people have bad assumption perspectives or different ones, comment below, share your story. I'd love to hear that. It's interesting to know what that is.
I do not. Such is life.
Oh, I was expecting a magic trick. Okay.
Well, we can do that.
For those who joined us, here we did one awesome magic trick at the very beginning, but I'm looking forward to the next one.
Well, let's do it.
Okay.
So this small group of cards, we'll use these to talk about assumptions versus observation.
Okay.
So let's see if we can tip this.
Yeah.
And lose our smiley faces, but you'll get our smiley hands. Okay. All right, Bobby, we'll do this together now. Yeah. Are we able to see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Can we see what the actual cards are?
So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. So pop a hand out here, Bobby. I'm going to show you the cards one at a time. Do your best to remember everything about all of them.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So now that you've observed the cards, I'll ask you some questions to test your assumptions. So easy question first. How many cards do I have?
There's 4 cards.
Yeah, 4 cards. I had 2 picture cards. I had 2 number cards.
Yes.
The number was an 8.
Yeah.
You remember the suit of the black 8?
I think it was a spade.
It was a spade.
Okay. Oh, I'm acing this.
Exactly. Spade goes on your hand. The red 8 was?
It was a heart.
It was a heart. Good. So red 8 goes on top. I had 2 picture cards too. Were they jacks, queens, or
they were kings?
They were kings.
Yeah.
Now at this point, this is observation, right?
Yeah.
I've got the kings, you've got the 8s.
Yeah.
But the moment I put them face to face, you won't be able to see them. If you can't observe them, then you have to make an assumption. Okay. This is observation. That is assumption.
Yeah. Okay.
You assume I have the kings, you have the 8s.
Correct.
Normally that's fine. But sometimes our assumptions can turn out to be wrong.
Whoa! Come on. That's crazy!
So the powerful thing there is, yes, your eyes told you one thing.
Oh my God.
And you use that to form an assumption.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was accurate. I mean, it was a valid assumption. But that's how all assumptions feel. They all feel valid. They all feel like, well, yes, I know this for sure. Until I don't. Until the evidence comes in and actually says otherwise. Wow. So I think that if we take that back to the workplace or any sort of relationship, gather more information, ask more questions, suspend judgment until later on, then start to make decisions on how you're going to act.
And is this lesson or that you have is more for leadership, like CEOs, vice presidents, or it's for everybody, or managers? Like, where do we see it often? Where do we need to really deal with this?
Well, the most obvious example for the need of empathy is in sales, certainly, right? I mean, that's where selling features is not as effective as selling benefits, because features are all about what you have to offer. Right. Benefits are all about what the other person gets out of it, right? So if I'm going to tell you that this car has 4-wheel drive and a 360 horsepower engine, okay, great. But if I'm going to look at things from your perspective, and see, all right, so you live in Canada, it's snowing, it's sleeting, you need four-wheel drive because that'll help you get through the traffic and get your kids to school safely. And that in the summer, that 360 horsepower engine is really going to get you where you want to go very quickly and keep you out of danger to avoid accidents. Oh, okay, now I'm talking to you from your needs. That's where somebody talked about seeing things from other people's point of view and acting based on the golden rule.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated.
Yes, yes.
Turns out the golden rule isn't that great. If I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated, that doesn't take into account what you need at all. So there's a tweak on the golden rule that they call the platinum rule.
Okay.
Which is, I'm going to treat you the way you want to be treated.
Oh, boom. Boom.
Right? So simple. But without empathy, without understanding that unconscious assumption that my truth is the same as your truth, well, I'm going to assume that you're going to want the same. You're going to be wanted to be treated the way I want to be treated. I'd rather ask more questions, figure out how you want to be treated, and then treat you accordingly.
Okay, so that just reminded me of a story. So I'll give you a story. So how that works. So yeah, the golden rule is you treat how you want to be treated. But here's an example where it doesn't work, because if anyone wants to study love languages, okay, so there's 5 love languages and how people feel or express love. There's gifts, there's touch, physical touch, there's words of affirmation, there's acts of service, and quality time. And so, if I want to express love to my wife and show and make her feel loved, how I want to be treated is I value acts of service. Now, she and I have similar ones. We both like touch, we both like words, but we have a disconnect where she loves quality time as one of her top ones, and I love acts of service, but it's not each other's top ones. And so for me, I would make her dinner and say, hey, honey, I made you dinner, and it's lovely. And then she's like, oh, thanks, and then she would never make me dinner, and so there was a disconnect there because I was treating her how I wanted to be treated. And then on the same note, she was big on quality time, so she'd say, oh, for her birthday or anniversary, hey, why don't we go rent a hotel or a bed and breakfast? I'm like, why don't we just stay here? We have an apartment to ourselves. And I didn't get it. Idiot. I didn't get it that no, she wanted quality time away from stuff with me. And so, but if I actually treat her how she wanted to be treated, which is what I do now. So one of the things I do now is, on her birthday or on her anniversaries, I plan something that I know she'll enjoy, which is let's do a hike with us and the kids for your birthday. And she loves that because it's quality time with us, right? And one of the things she does now is sometimes she'll make me tea, and say, hey, you want some tea? And she'll not even ask me, she'll make tea, bring it over. Oh, and I feel loved, right? Because she's like thinking about what I want. And so it's been magical to learn that about love languages, because people treat and receive love in different ways, and so they may have a different perspective in terms of what they want in terms of love. So that's what I've learned.
And how did you figure that out? How did you figure out that the way you wanted to feel loved was different?
Well, we went through the whole process of looking at the 5 things and say, hey, let's do this quiz and let's look at it. We had the book, and then we started to realize, oh, okay, and it was funny because we were mostly thinking, oh, see, we both like hugs, we both like words, I love you, and all that kind of stuff. And then we didn't really, and we both knew we didn't like gifts. It was like a gift. We're not big on gifts. And the other ones we didn't realize until we actually dived into it what it actually meant. I said, well, because I didn't understand what quality time meant versus acts of service, and sometimes many of these things overlap.
Sure.
So, for example, if I decide to treat my partner to, let's say, a special, I make her dinner and I give her a massage, right? That has touch, it has acts of service, it has quality time, all in the same thing. So you have to keep that in mind. So I'm trying to discern the difference. So when we actually dove deep and tried to really understand it and extract the information and get the perspective, then we saw the clear difference.
Yeah. So what I hear there is that you were acting prior to going through this process of learning each other's love language.
Yeah.
You were acting on assumptions based on your perspective. You were trying to give what you would want to receive.
Exactly.
And then you gathered more evidence through this process, learned how the other person wanted to be treated, and acted accordingly. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And so powerful.
Just takes work. And by the way, Jen's saying goodbye, so we'll see you again soon. But if you are on this Power Connection chat and you want to, sorry, something in my throat. If you want to ask questions, if you have questions on how to on challenging assumptions, you have questions on building empathy for yourself, for your team, for your company, your organization, for your movement, please ask questions below, and we can certainly take on questions. We're happy to take on questions. You have live access to us. That's why we do this, and we want to make sure we kind of go through it. Now, what about moments where we struggle with empathy? Is that? I mean, can you think of moments where we might struggle? I mean, you're an empathy guy, but like, when do you struggle with empathy?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Welcome to the human race.
Yeah.
We all struggle with empathy. Honestly, and I think I'll be interested in getting your take on this, Bobby, as a thought leader, knowledge expert. I find that most of the speakers that I know, our content is the stuff we need to work on the most. For me, empathy is something that I've struggled with. I assume that everybody's the same as me. I assume that the answers that I come up with something will fix other people's problems. So it's everywhere. That's why I've undertaken becoming a coach too.
Right.
So just getting that coach training of suspending judgment, asking better questions, and just listening for the bottom line has been tremendously valuable for me.
I think for me, I think I have a lot of empathy, and I've exercised it. But part of it because empathy is like a muscle, like
Yes.
your heart's a muscle. So I've exercised empathy in my work on Twitter, dealing with divisive people and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm finding I'm actually quite good at it, in the sense that in every situation, whether I have an argument with my mom or my wife or someone on Twitter or anything else, I'm able to use empathy to try to understand the point of view. Now, where I think I struggle with it is that the closer someone is to you, like your mom or your wife or your kid, it gets a little bit harder. And the other part, if it's frustrating you and you're angry, whatever, then yeah, sometimes you'll lose a little bit of that perspective. But you just got to bring it back. The best way to bring it back is, again, try to understand exactly where they're coming from, what's going on, try to find that information. But I think that's the only time where I really struggle, when someone that's really close to me that I care about does something that either hurts me or I feel pain of some sort, and so then I struggle a little bit. But because I'm trained in empathy and I exercise all the time on a daily basis, I can quickly get to it fast. Like I won't be like 4 days miserable. I within 10 minutes. Well, okay, take a breath, think. All right, so now, and so for me that works really well for me.
Yeah, and the idea that empathy is a skill is a little transformative for people. I think a lot of people believe that empathy is a trait, that we're born with X amount of empathy and that's what we get. And yeah, I think naturally different people do start with different levels of empathy, but it's absolutely a skill. It's something that you can work on, and as you say, with exercise, strengthen, get better at that skill. And even that, just realizing and embracing the fact that empathy is a skill, not a trait, is empowering.
Yeah, and it does take a lot of work. I mean, with my kids, for example, another story for you. Like, my daughter has a lot of empathy. She's always like, "Are you like?" If I get hurt, "Oh, are you okay, Daddy? Like, are you okay?" Like, she really, feels it. And my son struggled with empathy when he was younger, about 4 or 5. He just was absolutely really terrible. Like, just didn't, because he's really in his own world, and he likes to do the math. Like, his personality provides him with mastermind, likes to be control things, and he doesn't take the time. So we had to work on his empathy. And how do we do that? We read some certain books. There's a great book called Filling Buckets. And the idea is that if you should try to fill people's buckets, because it makes your bucket feel better too. And we work on his values and but the thing is, it's actually time consuming. Like, you can't just say, Niall, see that person there? Like, do you understand how they feel? Like, something like that. You actually have to. It's got to be like a 20-minute conversation. Say, listen, here's what happened. What do you think? Okay, now what do you think? Okay, what else do you think? Like, okay, and how does that make you feel? How do you think they feel? Like, and you have to. There's a lot of patience as a parent to actually work on their empathy, to help them think about that, and process that, and again, eventually make it as skills and make it a habit. and make it a daily habit, make it a daily practice. It takes a lot of time and effort. So I think a lot of people, if you really want to build empathy, it takes time. And there's workshops out there. Right?
Yep.
Do you do workshop with empathy? Yeah. Am I segueing to the selling? No, but I mean, does it?
Yeah, sure. I've got a keynote and a workshop on it. But actually, empathy is at the core of all of my work. And earlier you asked me whether it's specific to any job role.
Yeah.
And I find no, it's not. Empathy is one of those human 101 universal truth things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I tweak the presentations to fit different audiences,
Sure.
whether it's leaders or teams, or whether it's all about communication or problem solving. Yes, it gets shifted, but the content, the meat on the bones, is all the same of empathy. Something you were saying about your son made me think about the two different types of empathy.
Okay.
So there's cognitive empathy and affective empathy.
Okay.
Cognitive empathy is, yes, I'm going to think about what it would be like from their point of view. I'm going to try to mentally project myself into their situation, understand what that perspective is like, without necessarily feeling those emotions. And then affective empathy, affective, is about actually feeling. When you see someone, like your daughter, sees you get hurt, she feels that pain.
She feels it,
yeah. And those two things are obviously very similar, but there's a gap between those, and they're both important to be able to that point of view, and then also to be able to emotionally project yourself into that point of view. And sometimes it's useful to turn off the emotional side, right? Because I think some people are, I think we say highly sensitive people, are inundated with other people's feelings. I know a number of people who, when around people in stress, take that stress on. When around negativity, take that negativity on. And it can be very difficult to put up that firewall to keep those emotions out. And maybe that's where empathy as a weakness, the perspective of empathy as a weakness could have come in, where it's, I can't turn my empathy off.
And I think probably, and you talk about this, I'm curious how many kids struggle with this. Because I think empathy is great, and the ones who are really, quote unquote, sensitive, I think that I've seen some parents see that as an issue. Like, well, my kid's overly sensitive, and so needs counseling, needs therapy. And it's possible. I think it's okay to check that out. But I think that what usually happens is they just need tools. So as parents, you can guide them by giving them tools in terms of how they can process their emotions and how they can actually deal with that kind of stuff to understand a little bit better. And I think that's something that, and the other thing happens too is parents will talk about the things that they're concerned about, like politics or the environment or whatever. They do it in such a dreadful way that kids get overwhelmed by that because they're not ready for that type of conversation. So I've seen kids out there who are like, yeah, the planet's dying, and fine, Greta Thunberg, great, I love what she's doing, but for some kids, they need to be older to be able to process that kind of stuff, right? So I think that becomes a big challenge for them. That you don't want them to, you want, like, I can have the world weariness on my shoulders, but to put it on my child is not really the best thing. So that's something that comes into play to when you think of when I think about empathy. Yeah. What did you pull out here? Let's.
I just pulled out a few notes from an article that I wrote.
Oh, awesome.
On empathy, which is on my blog if you're interested.
There you go. At
www.dantrommater.com.
Boom. Yeah, you can see you can see Dan's name in the post and all the links that I shared. So yeah, that's good. Okay.
Just in terms of suggestions of how do you actually become more empathetic? I think a good step is being vulnerable.
Oh yeah.
It is. Yeah. There is so much power in vulnerability. It's paradoxical.
Yeah.
But every time that I've had something scary that I wanted to be, that I was hesitant about being vulnerable, when I finally pulled the trigger and opened up and let people see the whole picture, as scary as it was, such great things have come out of it. I get so much power in vulnerability, and I think that's tied directly to empathy, because it can be scary. It's very easy to have our point of view, stick with it, believe in it. And so opening up to somebody else's point of view is a vulnerable position because you're allowing your perspective to be challenged. Kind of scary, but so useful.
Yeah, I mean, a vulnerability is, Brené Brown talks about vulnerability and how it connects people. I mean, every time I'm vulnerable, there's always someone out there who relates to what I'm talking about. And like, that's really, I think 99% of the time, it's a great way to connect with people and be relatable and to be human. And most people, when 90% of the time, will say, yeah, you know what, I hear you, I feel you, and that's great. Unless, of course, they are those really angry people that have little to no empathy, or you have that one situation where they weren't, and then let's say your boss isn't at all, you're vulnerable, and they completely like crap all over you. Well, my empathy says maybe they're having a bad day. What's going on in their lives that's making them feel that way, as opposed to like, well, I can't believe I was vulnerable and you like crap all over my face. And so, empathy helps me process emotions too, and focus on what's going on. Because most people, and if your boss continues to not be receptive to that, then maybe you need a new boss. You need to move jobs, move roles, or try to find a way to manage this boss better, because that's the person you don't want to be working with.
This idea of empathy as a way to make oneself feel better comes to mind. So I think about road rage,
right,
or any sort of frustration on the road, right?
Man.
If somebody cuts you off, it's so easy and almost knee-jerk reaction to go to what's wrong with them. They're a jerk. They don't care about anybody.
Okay, but I've done that too. Holy cow! Yeah. We were talking about challenges before. Yeah, for sure. I road rage too.
But if you can stop and go, all right, hang on. Maybe, just maybe, this person is rushing to the hospital.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe their wife is there after just having an accident, and this guy's just got to get to the hospital real quick. Okay, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But if I can imagine that that's the case, oh, okay, well, he needs to go. Go ahead, that's fine. It makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Right? Empathy isn't, as much as it's about the other person, it doesn't only benefit the other people. It's benefiting me by chilling me the heck out.
Right. Yeah, mutual benefits to empathy, absolutely. That's a good example, because, I think you clearly can get road rage, no problem. And I think I should do that for everybody. Every single person that upsets me now, I'll say, maybe their wife's in the hospital and they're rushing. So, like, that's it. That's my one false assumption that I'm going to use all the time.
And it might not be true. And it's back to the stories we tell ourselves. If somebody cuts you off in traffic, immediately you've got a story about this horrible person in the car. That's going to have an effect on the way you feel. But if you tell a different story, this person has to get to the hospital.
Right.
I'm going to feel better about that.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, again, we're coming near the end of our broadcast. If you have any questions around empathy and challenging assumptions, this is the perfect time to ask questions. You can also like, heart, tap, all that kind of stuff. So tag people below. You can also ask questions. Let us know where you're from. But this is really this is why we're here to talk about challenging assumptions and building empathy.
I think maybe a neat way to end will be one more piece of magic that will allow everybody out there to have a sense of, to build your empathy, to try to get a sense of what it might feel like from Bobby's perspective. Now, we didn't talk about this before, so I'm kind of springing this on.
Sure. So all of it.
What I'm proposing is a piece of magic that will allow you to have wonder and allow everybody else to flex their empathy muscles. Try to get a sense of what it might feel like from his perspective. Are you up for that?
Yeah, man.
Now, the way this will work, I'll do a piece of magic for you. For you, if I do my job right, it will be magic. Okay. Everybody else, though, you're going to have a very different experience based on your physical perspective of viewing from the camera position. Okay. So, in order for this to work, you're going to not look at the camera because you'll get their perspective.
Yeah,
I want you to have only your perspective. There's a box of Kleenex. I'm going to grab that and then use that.
Move back, or
you know what? Yeah, move back
there
to right about there. Good. And back to me. We hold that.
Yes,
good.
Sir.
All right. So use one. So I'll ball this up. Come towards me. Okay. So here's the deal. It's a guessing game.
Okay.
I'm going to take this balled up Kleenex. I'll put it in one hand.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me whether it's in this hand or that hand.
It's in this hand.
It's in this hand. That's right.
Ah! Nailed it.
Fantastic. So we'll try
magic busted.
This hand or that?
That's in that.
That hand. That's close. But
what?
Right. Okay. So we'll try again. Maybe that didn't read very well. So we'll try this again. So is it in this hand or that?
Oh, it's in that hand. Oh my god.
I'm just not sure if this
Oh my god.
reading on camera or not. We'll try.
I bet you it's in my pocket right now.
You know what? We'll do a bigger one.
Bigger one.
Good. So.
Yeah.
So this hand or that?
This hand right here.
But yeah. Kind of obvious, in fact. Okay. All right. So again, this hand or that hand?
This hand.
Yeah, you could see it.
I can see it.
Not very fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Try again. So this hand.
Whoa.
I know I didn't give you much of a look. Yeah.
It's close. Oh my god.
Okay. All right. Last one. Last one. This one. You'll do the magic.
What? Okay.
You'll do the magic. I'm going to tap it on my hand 3 times.
Yeah.
On the 3rd tap, you blow, and it will disappear.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Okay, fine.
So, 1, 2, 3, blow.
Oh my god. Are they all in my head? No.
So at this point, now I'm not sure how well that read on the camera, but did you have any idea how that worked?
I have no clue.
Honestly?
No, I don't know.
No idea.
No idea.
And I'm going to guess from the camera's perspective, maybe we can see did you guys see how the trick was done? Did you actually see how the magic happened?
No, people are commenting it. Wow, it's good people on here. If you saw what happened or how it worked, comment and let us know if you saw it, because we'd love to understand if you saw how that magic trick worked. Because I didn't see anything and I didn't see how it worked. Like, that kind of blew my mind. Now,
if there wasn't, it's possible that because we've got a white wall and the Kleenex were white, that the reality from your perspective may not have transmitted very well.
Okay, no, people aren't commenting. So.
Okay, so I'll just tell you that the reality of the situation was that I was throwing these things over your head.
Oh.
So when I would say,
I did not see that. Oh my god. Okay.
Right.
They're down there. I was looking on the wall.
So,
so
from your perspective, it was magic because I was controlling your perceptions.
That's hilarious.
From everybody else's perspective, it was obvious what was happening. They were watching me throw those Kleenex over your head, right? So think about this in real life. How many times have you been in a situation arguing with somebody and saying to them, what is wrong with you? Why can't you see what's so obvious to me? Because to me and to everybody else, it was obvious what was happening, the facts in the matter. But from your perspective, physically, you just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens for a lot of different factors. In this case, it was your physical perspective. But sometimes it's the perspective of age, or gender, or culture, or you name it. What you had for breakfast this morning will shift and affect the way you see the world. If we assume that our perspective is shared by everybody, that's where conflicts can happen. Because there was only one set of facts that happened. There's only one physical thing that happened, but it was perceived from different physical points of view.
That was amazing. That was amazing. All right. Well, for some reason the comments have stopped. I'm not sure why. No one's asking questions or commenting, but so hopefully there's not something wrong with the feed. But any last thoughts you want to share while we kind of close up here?
I think the strongest things that I can recommend is 1, recognize that your truth is not the only truth, and 2, start asking better questions, open-ended questions, not yes/no questions, but things like, what would it be like if ... How would it feel if we ... What are the other ways that we can look at this situation? And then just sit back and shut up and listen.
That's awesome. And my take on empathy, which is the way I do empathy is I ask 3 very important questions. Okay, number 1, can I understand how they're feeling truly? Number 2, can I truly understand why they feel the way they do? Number 2. And number 3, which is the most important, can I support those feelings? And so if you can answer all 3 of those, if you answer all 3 of those questions, particularly the 3rd one, then it will definitely help with your empathy.
Break down the support. I don't understand that.
Because people just dismiss it, right? Oh, I'm sorry you're upset, and obviously because you're bleeding, but I don't see how I can support it. But I can by listening. I can by showing some compassion. I can by getting medical aid. I can by maybe calling the doctor. I can by seeing is there anything I can do to get information.
I see.
That's what I'm talking about. How can I support those feelings? Because that's where people screw up. That's where they start to lose it because of I empathize with you. I do. But you need to do this, and I don't care. Right? Is that really empathy? No. Right? There's a difference, right? So that's usually how I use that. All right. Well, listen. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. That was fantastic, and for the messages that were great. If you have any further questions, empathy, challenging assumptions, you can comment below and tag us, and we'll continue to answer any comments. I'll be here. I'm typically every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the Power Connection chat. But actually, this week there's a change. I should mention that I have an interview with Sarah Wells, who is a Canadian Olympian. She's a hurdler, and she's going to be with me on Thursday at 8:45 a.m. So this week we're doing Monday and Thursday, not Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So join us for that, and the next week I have more guests because if you get people that I can interview that are thought leaders, experts, influencers. Tag them in the comments. I'd love to have them join us. And thank you, Dan, so much for being part of this.
Pleasure.
That was awesome. All right, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, and we'll see you soon.